If everybody can sit down, we'll get started. All right. We're good. All right. I'd like to start by welcoming everyone to our third Industrial Hemp Study Committee. Kind of between the election, the hurricane, and special session, we've kind of had to change our date a few times. But at this time, I'd like to open our meeting and ask Commissioner Gary Black if he would open with prayer. But before we do, I would like to just encourage everybody to let's keep our friends down in Southwest Georgia in our thoughts and prayers. There was a good article in the Valdosta Daily Times yesterday talking about it's been over a month since the hurricane. They've still got debris, leaning signs, leaning trees where there are trees, roofs with blue tarps on them still on all their houses, dotting the landscape. But it kind of closed to bring it home, kind of said, even after the signs are straight and the trees are replanted, the roofs are fixed, the debris is gone, it's going to take months, years, generations for some of these families that lost everything to get back to where they were. So let's keep them in our thoughts and prayers. Thanks.
Lord, thank you that we can come before you. I thank the Lord it's an open invitation for us to come before you home. And I thank you that you love us. Thank you for your grace. Thank you, Lord, that repeatedly you tell us in your word that if we lack wisdom, you call us to ask you. So we do ask you for wisdom, not just with the subject matter today, but also with our friends in the affected area. And I thank you for Lord, those flickers of light, where we can see, Lord, even in the midst of the storm, how you not ever forsake us at all. You protected families and lost a life was minimal, but Father, amidst still looking at property damage and crop damage, I pray for wisdom for those of us here at the state level and the federal level too to come to assistance. I thank you for what's already been done. Father, I pray for your wisdom in these two things you give to us to do with loans and helping with the cleanup. Father, a lot of stuff has to be done, and I just ask you to help us find the answers and where it can be done quickly and where we can serve. That's what you promised to do. Guide us today, I pray. Thank you for this season.
Thank you. First, I'd like to bring everyone up to date what we've done up to this point. And it started in 2014 at a federal level. The farm bill that was passed made it where states could create pilot programs to study the viability of industrial hemp. And I think 37 states have passed some form of legislation. It might be more than that now. You can probably correct me.
41 now.
41 now have passed legislation. Georgia's not one of those. But in this year's Farm Bill, 2018, the bill that passed the Senate, Senator Mitch McConnell, the majority leader in the Senate, one of the sponsors of it, it seeks to declassify industrial hemp as a Schedule I narcotic. The version that came from the House did not pass, so now they're in a conference committee. I understand that Senator McConnell wants this bill to pass with the hemp provision in there, so I would guess it will probably pass. Then in this past session at the House, Chairman McCall introduced a resolution to create a study committee, and that's what we have here. We are going around having our study committee meetings, and we've had 3 meetings. This will be our 3rd meeting. Our first meeting was in Elberton. We kind of called it our Hemp 101 class, tried to educate everybody on what that was, what hemp is, and the difference between that and the marijuana, the uses of it, the THC level, how it differs from marijuana and hemp. Hemp to be industrial hemp has to be 0.3% or less, and the marijuana that they use now, understand, 18 to 25%. And Scott with GBI can probably verify the percent of THC in the marijuana plant.
On average, you're absolutely right.
So,
It's increased
anyway, we talked about the uses, and we also, we met with a manufacturer that would like to bring a processing plant here to Georgia if we pass some sort of legislation and the Farm Bill passes in Washington. Our second meeting, we took a tour to Kentucky, and we met with the Kentucky Department of Ag, talked with them about their program, how they've set it up, how everything is fee-based, there's no money appropriated. Talked with the University of Kentucky professor out there that's supposed to be the most knowledgeable person in the United States on industrial hemp, the uses and how to grow it and the uses of it. And then we also toured a processing plant. They're doing a lot of research out there on the different varieties of seed, where they can certify them to make sure that they have less than the 0.3 THC to be classified as industrial hemp. Then we also toured a actual field where they were growing the marijuana, and I have to confess, first time I've ever seen a marijuana plant, but it's quite impressive. But anyway, we had a good trip, Robert and I, and now brings us to this third meeting, and what we want to do today, we've got representatives from the Department of Ag here in Georgia. We got Commissioner Gary Black, Terry Norris with the Sheriff's Association here in Georgia, and then Scott Dutton with the GBI. We want to try to listen to what their concerns are with the industrial hemp and try to see if we can address those up front before we move forward. I've talked with Commissioner Black and Terry Norris that we want to have them on board before we try to move anything forward. We want to get everybody on the same page. So any concerns that they have, we'd like to address. And then we got Terry Holyfield with the Georgia Crop Improvement Association. If we move forward with this, we're going to need a receiving agent to receive the seed, make sure they're certified and everything is intact, where we can trace the seeds from the supplier to the farmer. And he's going to talk about what they do. And then we've got Jonathan Miller with the U.S. Hemp Roundtable, and he's here at the mic with us this morning. We'd ask him to start and kind of tell us a little bit about the U.S. Hemp Roundtable and also sample legislation that other states have done, and just the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, members of the committee. I'm Jonathan, and I'm a recovering politician. I was the state treasurer of Kentucky. I ran for governor until the people of Kentucky overwhelmingly decided they did not want me to be their governor. We did not have a close election like you guys did. But I want to tell you a little bit about my journey, about how I got from being a politician to being here with you all today, because I think it helps illustrate where we are with the issue of hemp and both nationally, but also this part of the country where Kentuckians and Georgians call home. When I was in politics, my position on hemp was reflexively to be against it, because Kentucky is a conservative state and most of us didn't know the difference, and so it was easy for me to say I was against it. There's this guy that ran for office. He ran for office 12 times in Kentucky. His name was Gatewood Galbraith. And Gatewood was always the smartest and funniest guy at the debates. But his leading issue was legalizing marijuana. And the big problem was he'd show up at most of the debates and he'd smell like marijuana. So he got typecast as Gateweed was his nickname. Well, he also talked a lot about legalizing hemp, and no one was really listening to him because they thought that it was the same thing. Well, he passed away about 6 years ago, and as a tribute to him, I wrote an article saying that Gatewood was right, we should legalize hemp. I took a look at it. I realized how our farmers in Kentucky were really struggling. I know farmers all over the country are, but particularly in Kentucky with the decline of the tobacco industry, tobacco farmers were really struggling to put food on the table, to have Christmas for their kids. And hemp was historically a major cash crop in our part of the country. And I understood that over time, since reefer madness of the early 20th century, science has made it very clear that you can tell the difference. Again, as the chairman said earlier, hemp has 0.3%, often much less percent THC, while marijuana is 15 to 25%. So it's not even going to remotely get you high. If you tried to smoke a field of hemp, you're just going to get sick. You're not going to get the least bit high. So I wrote that article, and the then agriculture commissioner, his name is Jamie Comer, saw that article. He said, Jonathan, I campaigned on bringing legalized hemp to Kentucky. Will you help me in these efforts? And I said, sure, Jamie, we don't have a chance, but it'll be fun trying. Well, we went from having the governor, the Speaker of the House, the Senate President all against us to, within 6 months, going across the state, educating people about the difference between hemp and marijuana. And both legislative branches passed it overwhelmingly. The governor changed his mind, he signed it. And most importantly, a politician in Washington noticed, and as, again, the chairman mentioned, that was Mitch McConnell. And Mitch McConnell not only saw the politics, but he brought in the experts, I think some of the same experts you've seen, learned about the crop, learned about its uses, learned about how it could help farmers, and he became our big champion. So in 2014, I'm in private practice. I'm working with the Commissioner of Agriculture and Senate Majority Leader McConnell to help get the language on the Farm Bill in 2014, which created pilot programs across, allowed states to create pilot programs. Kentucky was first in line and did a lot of work over the course of the next years with law enforcement, because the number one issue for us was to prove to law enforcement that this was not going to exacerbate the problem of marijuana. I don't know if you've seen the show Justified, but if you have or you're familiar, East Kentucky, for many decades, our leading cash crop has been marijuana. It's been illegal, but it's been marijuana. And the last thing we wanted to do was to help out that industry. It turned out, though, that we were able to prove to law enforcement that hemp actually helped with law enforcement. First of all, now that testing is so much easier and more affordable, it's very simple and very affordable to do a test to be sure that a product is not hemp, is marijuana, not hemp. Second, because of GPS technology, when a helicopter is flying over a field, and you can't tell the difference when you're that many feet up, but they'll be able to look at their computer and they'll look and be able to see if you've got a hemp if you've got a hemp field, you got to be registered with the state. You got to give them your GPS coordinates. That officer is going to know that that's hemp and that's not marijuana. And most interestingly or amusingly or ironically, if you want to call it, one of the big concerns was, well, what if somebody gets into the hemp program, grows a whole field of hemp, and then puts some marijuana, hides it in the middle as a way to smuggle marijuana? Well, it turns out if he does that, he's in bad shape, because when hemp and marijuana are near each other, they cross-pollinate, and it ruins the THC level of the marijuana, so it's no longer any good. So in a sense, hemp is the enemy of marijuana, and now we've got law enforcement wanting us to grow more hemp in East Kentucky because it's going to ruin all the bad actors who are growing marijuana out there. So we were able to prove that this is a great program. As the chairman mentioned, we're now 41 states have signed up, and about 20 of them have already started their programs. Another 20 are just getting their regulations organized. And so Mitch McConnell looked around and he said, well, we're going to declare victory. This works. We are going to now take this from a pilot program and have permanent hemp legalization. And so he introduced the Hemp Farming Act of 2018. And what that does, a couple major things it does. Well, I'd say three major things it does. Number one, it permanently removes hemp from the Controlled Substance Act. So it designates hemp as an agriculture commodity, which it's always been, it's always should have been, but now the law will reflect that. Second, it defines hemp so that not only is it legal to grow hemp, but it's also legal to sell hemp products. We've had some challenges early on where initially the DEA would say, okay, you can grow it, but you can't sell hemp products. And I think most of you that are farmers would probably agree, why would I want to grow a crop where I can't sell the crop as a product? So it makes clear that not only is hemp, but hemp products and all of the hemp extracts, cannabinoids, and derivatives are 100% legal. Third, it offers an opportunity now for a crop insurance program. And crop insurance, again, you all know that a lot better than I do. It is a major source of angst for farmers, and this will help deal with that problem. So Mitch McConnell's the smartest guy in Washington, and when I say that, do understand I'm a Democrat. One of the reasons why I'm a recovering politician, because the Democrat in Kentucky can't win anymore. But so when I praise Mitch McConnell, you know I mean it. But here's the smartest guy in Washington. He realized that we couldn't get this passed as a standalone bill because nothing's passing up there. The only things that pass up in Washington are major pieces of legislation that must pass. And one of those major pieces of legislation that must pass is the Farm Bill. So he attached the Hemp Farming Act to the 2018 Farm Bill. It was passed overwhelmingly in the Senate. As the chairman mentioned, the House had a real big debate about food stamps, and so they decided not to take up any other big issues. And so now the House and the Senate are in a conference committee trying to resolve this bill. Mitch McConnell has guaranteed this, when the Farm Bill passes, it will have the hemp provisions in it. And again, when Mitch McConnell is not a guy who exaggerates, he's not into hyperbole, but he's guaranteed this. So we are very optimistic that when the Farm Bill passes and the debate's going on about other things, right now it's going on about how to deal with forest fires, that it will have that provision in it. So, Mr. Chairman, I could speak for hours, and I know you've got some other folks that want to testify. I'm happy to stay around for questions. I'm happy to take questions now or stay around for questions, however you'd like to handle that.
Does anybody have a question now they'd like to ask, or we bring Jonathan back up at the end with everybody, and we kind of ask questions at the end, if that would, I think we'll do that, ask some questions at the end. At this time, I kind of got ahead of myself a little bit. I meant to thank Chairman Pruitt. He arranged the meeting venue for us today, and he does a great job representing this area. And I would like to get him to introduce the president of the college for us. And Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As all of us are very busy, and I really appreciate all of you taking time to come. And I know that Eastman's not really on the path to anywhere anymore. It used to be the only way you could get from north to the south was come through here before they built the interstate. Obviously, that's why Mr. Stuckey did so well with his candy booth right beside the road. And I hope you'll stay around and visit and maybe spend the night and spend some money. That'd be great. But I tell you how far we are down here in the south. It was 2 weeks after the election before we figured out who won. Y'all didn't have a minute. That was the governor's race I'm talking about. But news does travel slow sometimes getting down here. But I want to tell you that one of the main reasons that I wanted to have one of the hemp meeting here is because we could show off our school a little bit, our aviation college. And Aiden Clark, our president, he's been on the road and busy. And he just showed up, and I want to get him to have an opportunity, if you would, to talk a little bit about the school and what we have and where we were and where we're going.
Sure, I'll be brief. I know you guys have a lot to do. I'm the dean, by the way, not the president.
No, I'm sorry.
But I run this campus here and all the academic programs here. Some of you guys may or may not be familiar, but we are the only four-year comprehensive aviation program in the state of Georgia. We have been working to expand our School of Aviation throughout the state. We've opened a satellite campus in Macon. We operate the Macon Downtown FBO, and we also recently this semester just opened our facility in Adel, Georgia, to reach down to the South Georgia area. And in those locations, we're only offering flight training. Here at this campus, this is our main aviation campus. We offer air traffic control, we offer flight training, aircraft maintenance, aircraft structural technology. Our enrollment has jumped in the last 4 years, 61%. You may or may not know that the aerospace industry is the second largest industry in the state of Georgia. Delta Airlines is the largest private employer in the state of Georgia. Delta selected 8 universities across the country, what they consider to be the top 8 universities across the country doing flight training, and we were selected as one of the original 8 to participate in the Propel program. So that's a pathway for our students, which has never existed in my lifetime, for a student to come to a school like this, have a pathway to the regional airlines, and then to a seat at Delta Airlines. And we also have partnerships with wholly owned subsidiaries of American Airlines through Piedmont and PSA. Delta likes our graduates for both mechanics and maintenance. Our air traffic control program, if you have an opportunity to see it. And we'll certainly make tours available for anybody that wants them this afternoon. Like I said, I know you guys have a long way to travel.
What is your enrollment? You said your enrollment's up 61%. What's
Our
your total enrollment?
last time I looked was 648, I believe.
Wow.
648 students, and some of those are fully online because our flight training obviously has to be face-to-face, and our maintenance training has to be face-to-face, but and then we offer all the academic courses to go with it face-to-face, but we also offer those fully online as well. And we work with military and folks working at Robins Air Force Base that maybe have the work experience, maybe they have their airframe and power plant certification, their flight ratings, they want to add the 4-year degree to that. We do what we call prior learning assessment training credits, so they can get credit toward their 4-year degree.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Chairman, turn it back over to you.
Thank you. At this time, I'm going to ask Terry Norris if he'll come forward with the Sheriff's Association, and I'd like to brag on Terry a little bit. He's been great to work with for the last 4 years since I've been there. He does a great job. I know he had a big job yesterday trying to get the National Guard is deploying some troops today, and had to coordinate that, getting those convoys moved through the state. So appreciate what you do.
Well, yes, sir, and good afternoon. Appreciate you having me. I am Terry Norris, but I'm also known as Raylan Givens. Where's the gentleman that last spoke? One of the greatest series, if you haven't seen Justified, you need to. It's not exactly realistic sometimes, but it is entertaining. I am Terry Norris. I'm Executive Director of the Georgia Sheriff's Association. I have 2 or 3 sheriffs over here and some of our command level folks and deputies. So we're glad to be here and glad to be part of this conversation. This is the first official time we have spoken publicly about the issue of industrial hemp. We had not and really have not taken an official position on the cultivation on the matter. We do have a very specific opposition position on legalizing marijuana. So we do know the difference. We do not think that this committee is in any way a crossover committee. Historically speaking, the hemp and, as you said, marijuana have sort of traveled together in terms of the eyes of the public. And I think I know it had been our concern that with hemp came marijuana. And I think we are now seeing that's not necessarily the case. So today, I would just very briefly like to say that the sheriffs are reserving the right to have an official position on any legislation that might be recommended by this group in an effort to see what sort of safeguards we've got in terms of control of the product afterwards and control of the seedings in the beginning, or the seeds in the beginning, and the processing. I will say this, I do believe if legislation comes forward and those appropriate safeguards in the eyes of the sheriffs are there, I don't think you'll see a position taken on the matter of cultivation for industrial purposes. So I say that in a very short and concise way, and I look forward to hearing more. But if you would indulge me just a second, Mr. Chairman, and other members, while I've got an audience, they are adamantly against commercialization of marijuana. They are adamantly against the cultivation of marijuana for any purpose, and they have historically supported the use of low-level THC medical marijuana oil for children with seizure disorders. Now, we all know that one group of folks has been expanded into many. We are truly afraid of the marijuana outcome, the commercialization and legalization of marijuana, so much so that we're bringing in experts from Colorado and other states to talk to sheriffs this coming January, and hopefully have a few conversations with y'all as well. We want to be part of that conversation, and we want you all to hear from your sheriffs, as you always do. Back on hemp, I do think there's a good chance that, again, the sheriffs will stand down and have no real position if those safeguards are included. So,
Thank you. Anybody have any questions right now? Yeah. Robert?
Thank you, Terry. Appreciate you coming and those comments. You touched on, and it's been my concern, is the education level of all of us. I've learned a lot through this process about hemp and different from marijuana. What do you think the level of knowledge on our sheriffs are in this state now about hemp as opposed to marijuana and that sort of
Well,
thing?
certainly you all know much more about the hemp discussion than they do. We had a conversation about hemp. We whet their appetite, so to speak, and that's the reason I think they will stand down, and in fact, that's what they said they would do. As far as the marijuana, we've done a pretty good amount of research in terms of what's occurred in other states. I think they're much more concerned and much more educated on marijuana, on today's marijuana. And as Scott Dutton has said and the chairman said, and the other gentleman agreed to, the level of THC in marijuana is much higher. It is a dangerous drug. We don't really have any other way to look at it, Mr. Dickey, period. We see it not only as a gateway drug, but as a dangerous drug. We see when we read the reports, there's something called the high-intensity drug trafficking areas. Those are regions throughout the United States where those regions concentrate. It's a federal, state, and local initiative to concentrate on all sorts of drug activity. The Rocky Mountain HIDA report, you can Google it, you can go online. It is the most devastating thing that's occurred in the Colorado society. Kids won't go to school. They use marijuana at a much earlier age. Cops can't pass drug tests. Heavy equipment operators can't pass drug tests. There's more wrecks. There's more workers' comp claims. It is a train wreck. And Colorado started just like we started with let's provide low THC oil for children with seizure disorders. That's how it all started there too. It expanded. My numbers are not precise, but it expanded. The year before Colorado allowed cultivation for medical purposes, the numbers were in the 6,000s of people on their registry to be allowed to use the oil. The year after cultivation was allowed, that number jumped to in the 20,000s. So it was a supply pushing demand, it seemed. But nonetheless, we want to have conversations. The sheriffs may end up being the last people standing on this issue, but I don't see their position changing on marijuana.
But just to clarify, thank you for all that information about hemp. You think at the end of the day they'll be educated enough to know the difference from what this committee's doing with hemp as opposed to
I'm sorry, I misunderstood the question. I think it's going to take some training, some learning. I'm not sure. I have not seen the two plants together. I know they look remarkably alike. So I'm not sure how that's going to equate or translate into a deputy or a police officer, stopping someone with an ounce of leafy substance and then being able to field test and know on the side. I think Scott Dutton might can address that. So yes, I think that will be a concern. But I'm sure that Kentucky has an answer to that. And Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry I was unable to accompany you to Kentucky because I was going to go up and look for Raylan. Anyway.
We might have to do another trip next year.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So with that, thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
I think Chairman McCall has a question as well.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, Mr. Tom. How are you?
And this is kind of more of a comment. I'm glad Jonathan said what he did. I was in Denver at an ag meeting 2 years ago, and they took us through one of the grow facilities right there. And some little red-headed girl that was taking us through it that knows more about growing marijuana than anybody I've laid eyes on was adamant about the fact that they didn't want any foreign-type plant that resembled marijuana in the grow facility because it would screw up the THC. And a lot of people have said to me that, well, if you got a 200-acre hemp field, they're going to put marijuana in the middle of it. And I have always said no because the hemp will screw up the THC in the marijuana. And that's what you just said, that when it cross-pollinates. And that's what this little old girl was talking about in Colorado, that in that grow facility, they didn't want anything other than their marijuana seed growing in that facility. So I'm glad he said what he did, because it backs up my argument that you can't camouflage marijuana with industrial hemp if you have the right kind of seed for industrial hemp. And that's been my argument for the camouflaging effect. Not to mention the fact that, you know, when y'all are flying, which I appreciate y'all doing all that, you know, you got coordinates that, yeah, there is supposed to be a field here.
And I think all that is seemingly resolved to a great extent in Kentucky. But again, I think our street level problem is going to be, is this marijuana or is this hemp?
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah,
When
that's
y'all
the
stop
part.
somebody,
Yes,
I
sir.
understand that,
Yes, sir.
and I don't
And I believe that was Representative Dickey's thought as well.
I think Phil, right?
He's got it with Georgia Crop Improvement Association.
I'm not with Georgia Crop, I'm a farmer. I'm probably the only guy in the room that grew hemp last year. And I grew it and I went to Canada, received a Health Canada license to grow hemp. We hacked off the road marijuana growers so bad, they threatened us. Because we had 300 acres of hemp. And what happens is the bees will cross-pollinate between the industrial hemp and the road marijuana and turn all of the road marijuana to male plants, and you have no production of cannabis. I can tell you for a fact that's what happens. Because in certain places of the Maritimes where we were growing, it became kind of hostile. There were people that left here in the Vietnam War and went and settled in some of those areas, and they made a living off growing bootleg marijuana. I am for industrial hemp because of the CBD oil. I will be growing several thousand acres in Canada next year. I want to grow 5,000 acres in Georgia, but it is a wonderful product, and I will be more than happy. I'm very limited on time to volunteer my services. I have thousands of pictures of everything that we did last year, and I can educate your guys real quick where they can tell the difference between industrial hemp and marijuana cannabis.
On the roadway, on the roadside.
I appreciate it. I look forward to working with you
Yes,
on any
sir.
legislation we bring forward to definitely get your input and make sure we have everybody
Well,
on
we
board.
appreciate y'all letting us come by and speak for a minute. Thank you.
Thank you. No, at the end, we'll go through. At this time, I'm going to ask Scott Dutton with the GBI to come up and address the industrial hemp, the issues, concerns that they might have, that we need to, questions we might have to answer, need to answer, or the floor is yours.
Chairman, thank you for the invitation. This will be my first meeting as it relates, or GBI's first meeting as it relates to industrial hemp. So I did a little bit of research before being invited to the meeting, and I am not a scientist. However, we do have a full staff of scientists that work in our crime labs. And the biggest takeaway that I took from a GBI perspective, not necessarily the law enforcement piece of this, is this thing buzzing to me? Not necessarily from a law enforcement piece, but more so from a scientific approach. I'll point out in the early 2000s, probably even before then, GBI started a process of training police officers, deputies throughout the state in identifying marijuana through visual test and then a chemical test to show the presence of THC in marijuana. And through that process, the idea was there is so much marijuana coming into the crime lab for testing that it made sense. People know what marijuana looks like, and with scientific testing behind that, that these level of tests could happen in these local jurisdictions without having to put the burden on the crime lab to perform these tests. This way they could do the more chemical-based drugs. And through that, GBI had eliminated all of their marijuana scientists. So from the standpoint of The day was, or back in the day, the function was, their specialty was working through marijuana. So it was the visual test and the chemical test that followed behind that. So essentially, what this will do, and this goes back to the fact that hemp looks exactly like marijuana, that portion of how we do business now is going to have to change. That will no longer stand, or at least it's my opinion, it would no longer stand as it relates to making marijuana cases based on how we're doing business now. So that's a consideration that needs to take place. I want to say back in 2003, I asked the crime lab from the standpoint of what was the impact, and at that time they mentioned it was probably about 6 scientists, and this is back 2003, that they were able to redesignate for other drug programs that we were responsible for. So there again, this is one of those things from an enforcement standpoint. This is something that needs to be considered and looked at as it relates to testing, as it relates to marijuana, because I am told it looks exactly the same, and the only way that you can do that is push it through the lab. And then, of course, with all the other drugs and new analogs that are coming along, that's more of a backlog and more work associated with that. The other thing, and I guess that's pretty much it from a GBI perspective. I mean, always from a law enforcement perspective, concerns of fraud, concerns of, you mentioned camouflage. It may not be the individual who is growing the industrial hemp, but it could be an individual grower wanting to camouflage his stash. And I'll point out back in for me, in the late 80s, mid 80s, in working undercover cases, and the marijuana type stuff that we used to buy at that particular time, the content level was probably around maybe 6%. So the levels were much lower, but it's still same effect from the standpoint of now that we've reached this level of scientifically honing in on what's going to get you the highest THC level, and I'm switching to cultivating marijuana, but from that standpoint, that's a true science. I mean, they've really capitalized on the fact of a bigger THC content level. I think that's what everybody tries to go for from a natural grow perspective, but that's a consideration.
Thank you for being. Let me make sure I understand. So presently now, if your lab is asked to test for marijuana, you do a visual test, and it's not a chemical test.
Well, so they can do a chemical test, and typically what happens throughout the jurisdictions, not necessarily in the lab, is a visual test, and then there is a chemical test, and it only tests for presence of THC. That can be less than 0.3%, and it's going to test positive for presence of THC marijuana.
Is it presently, and I don't know this, is it presently illegal to possess hemp in the state of Georgia now?
I understand. Well, I think this is one of those things that's very questionable in what form, and Terry, you may have a better sense of. I've asked several people that, and it's kind of dancing around the issue from the standpoint of depends on the THC levels. We're accustomed to looking at marijuana as it relates to THC and determining that above, the presence of THC. So,
well, I'm just thinking, something occurred to me, if someone would have been stopped with hemp and you didn't test the level of it.
That's right.
I'm not sure your test now.
That's right.
In the present condition, even without a Georgia law, you could certainly get questioned. Second guessed, I guess, would be the word.
That's right.
By someone.
You're right. It limits your ability to.
I mean, it seems like you're going to have to change your test anyway, whether we pass a bill or not. It looks to me like with all these other states having ability to grow and grow hemp, I mean.
True, but if it's illegal, it's illegal. So it makes it easier from the standpoint of you identify it as marijuana. Now, they may identify it as industrial hemp, but There again, that's another battle
Yeah.
that has to
Yeah,
be fought.
yeah, if that Farm Bill passes, you definitely
Right.
have to.
That's right.
Irregardless what we do.
This is something Jonathan might address. If somebody gets caught with hemp in their car, not on the farm where it's supposed to be grown, how is that handled in Kentucky?
I should have made this in my opening statement. This is the other big issue. Somebody's driving down the street with a big truckload of stuff that looks like cannabis, and he's pulled off the side of the road, and he says, "No, officer, that's hemp." So the officer has a simple solution, doesn't have to take it to testing lab. He says, "Okay, show me your license," because the only people under federal
It
law
should have a license.
that can have hemp, can grow hemp, are licensed. Now, it could be, that could be hemp in his truck, but if he doesn't have a license,
It's illegal.
he's growing it illegal.
Yeah, that's
So
right. That's what we heard.
It is a controlled substance, so it's limited only to farmers who have a license with the state.
Yes.
That are driving under the influence, how are they testing that and actually making any cases for dangerous driving?
That is a study in motion now, trying to figure that out. Like, I don't think they've got a portable test for the side of the road. I think they're close, or we're close, or the United States is close, or whoever's developing those things is close. But that's been a problem out there as well. But if I may, Mr. Chairman, continue just a minute.
Yes.
One thing that Scott Dutton won't tell you probably today is, but these gentlemen will, is that our crime lab is sorely underfunded already. And if we do, if the Farm Bill passes, if we do this, to the gentleman over here, I'm not saying they're opposed to it, I'm just saying their questions. Without your, I may talk to you later about letting you talk to the sheriff's office. But going forward, they are quite concerned with not the growth aspect of it, and if the card works, and the farmer's the only one that is licensed, and if his workers can't take any home or have any outside the farming operation, and there's a way to prove that that's the license holder, that may resolve a bunch of problems.
Yeah.
But if you're worried about small amounts of hemp being confused with marijuana, already we can't get generally speaking, small amounts of marijuana tested at the lab anyway. If we do, how long does it take, guys? A long time. So, and it's not their fault. They just don't have the resources. So again, to reiterate what I said a while ago, if we do this, the lab's got to have some more support.
And that's what we need to hear. That's issues we need to address. All right, Scott, I appreciate it. Any other questions for Scott?
Yes.
I won't say that it's improved, but have they changed to 25%?
Absolutely. I mean, and that's I guess, the biology or the science behind what they're doing in Colorado, California, and like states it's all about profitability, which in any kind of business that makes perfect sense. So it's to increase the THC level in marijuana cultivation.
But does it take as much, I don't know about marijuana, does it take as much, 25% to do the same thing as 6%?
Well, I mean, they say it does. I've never smoked marijuana. I don't know. But, obviously the higher THC level is probably what they're looking for.
Go back to my previous statement, if it's 25%, does it take more hemp to count to bring it, like what? He was talking about California. You said, where's the balance at?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, the legal standards, the 0.3%, and I don't know. I mean, that's a very good question.
I do know male plants ain't what you want,
Right.
if you're selling it for marijuana, because that ain't what a bud.
But a lot of times, illicit sales, there's not a government backing behind, this is the good stuff, this is no pesticides, those kind of, these are street deals, so, you know.
Thank you,
Okay.
Scott.
Thank you.
At this time, I'm going to ask Terry Holyfield to come up and, with the Georgia Crop Improvement Association and tell us a little bit about what they do as far as with the seed, being able to keep it certified and trace from the supplier to the farmer, and how he fits in this equation if we move forward.
Okay. First of all, I want to thank you for inviting me, and Patrick for giving me some background information that helped to educate me some. Second thing is I have a sinus infection, so if I'm too loud or too low, somebody needs to go this or this. And when you ask questions, it's not that I'm avoiding you. I probably don't hear you. And the other part of that is it's an old age thing. Some of you may know about that. Some of you may not. The loss of hearing. So we know you're old. Yeah, I'll tell you about that. Anyway, and the other thing is I'm not for or against. I'm just here. And I'm here to make you a proposal. And before I make you that proposal, though, I would like to tell you a little bit about Georgia Crop Improvement Association, what we are, who we are, where we come from. We're organized in 1946 as a not-for-profit organization. I have 12 board members that establish policy. I try to implement and carry that policy out. We are actually an agent of the College of Agriculture and Environmental Sciences. But in 1946, we were viewed as regulatory. College of Ag felt as though, even though under the land grant system, they actually had responsibility for seed certification, they felt like that we were regulatory, did not fulfill teaching, research, or extension type work, so we were put off to the side. We are self-supporting. We don't receive any tax dollars whatsoever. We are established by state statute. We are also, by a letter of agreement with the USDA, we are covered. Seed certification is under the Federal Seed Act, so we have that statutory authority, whatever that might be. Our core business is seed certification, which simply means that we are charged with the responsibility of developing a system, a quality control system, if you will, that ensures a steady supply of high-quality seed to Georgia farmers. We do that. It's a four-step approach. We know the pedigree of all seed that is in our program, very similar to those of you who might know about the pedigree on your dog or your beef cow, whatever. We can trace seed back to the beginning and through the sales process as part of our documented records. We do field inspections to determine variety identity, purity, absence of other crops, absence of weed seed. We also manage what we refer to as an approved conditioning facility program, where you store certified seed and condition certified seed. And all certified seed has to be sampled, sent to the state laboratory for analysis. At that point in time, we verify what we found in the field, and we also are looking for quality standards relating to germination, inert matter, those sort of things. In 2018, we field inspected 144,000 acres of peanuts, soybeans, turf grasses, and small grains that will be used for planting seed. So it's a right large operation that we have. We operate on about $1.5 million budget. Like I say, it's all self-generated, and we have 11 full-time employees. We also provide some other services, and you'll understand why this is important. We also provide other services to agriculture. In connection with Georgia Fruit and Vegetable Growers Association, we have a food safety program for packing facilities that pack watermelons, cantaloupes, onions, those sorts of things. And we actually do the entire Southeast with that program. We are also a USDA certified agency for the National Organic Program, which means that if you want to produce and market your product as organic, then you apply to us. We make the inspection. We determine if you're in compliance, and as such, if you are, then you get a certificate, and you can market your product as organic. We also work with the University of Georgia Research Foundation and the Georgia Seed Development Commission, who license University of Georgia to develop cultivars of predominantly peanuts, turfgrass, soybeans to people who are in the seed business who propagate and market. We work with this group to determine compliance with the licensing as well as accurate royalty payments. And we also do some international work with the University of Georgia to develop turfgrass varieties. I say all that to get to my point in that I think Georgia Crop Improvement, and through our subsidiary called Agricultural Audits LLC, is uniquely qualified and experienced that if you move forward with this program, I believe that we can develop a program. I'm not sure I want to be in the permitting and licensing. I think that would need to be someone that's by statute is in charge of that. But I believe we could provide a program of, as you talked about, maybe seed acceptance and distribution to licensed growers. I believe that we could develop a program of sampling and testing and maintain chain of custody from the field to the laboratory to determine THC content, or if you elect to go and determine THC content on the end product rather than the production side, because production has some issues with THC being altered depending on the environment, so you might want to think about going to the product end. But I believe we could develop a program that would monitor processors, harvesting, processing, storage, and right through sales. And we call those kind of programs identity preserve programs, which is just our terminology for that. I believe we could do it proficiently and efficiently without cost to the state. As I say, our program is paid by our clients, and so we would think that would be a good model to continue on here. Georgia Crop Improvement is the only legal certifying agency in Georgia, but there are 44 other crop improvement associations in the United States. Everybody has a national association, and so we have that, and we all belong to that. And I have talked to my counterparts in Colorado, Tennessee, and Kentucky to kind of see, they were the first in this, and they were incorporated into part of the regulation documentation process. And I've talked to them to determine what worked, what didn't work. If they were going to rewrite a program, how would they do it? And I believe that we can learn from their pluses and minuses, if you will, and avoid some of the pitfalls that they ran into. One of the problems, unfortunately, is the seed issue, particularly in Kentucky and Tennessee, where they require that you have certified seed. The problem is there doesn't appear to be a mature seed industry, and consequently, it's difficult to get known varieties from reputable seed people. So that's an issue that might need to be worked on. I do understand that under the current rules you have to go by that someone in the state has to receive that seed. It might be Georgia Crop Improvement. It could be a company or a facility that some of you are familiar with, Georgia Seed Development Commission, who is a quasi-state organization. They might be able to accept seed, but all those things I think can be worked out as time goes by. So if you move forward and you see that we can provide some assistance there, then we're certainly willing to look into it and work with you. It's going to take a lot of work, but we would like to participate if possible.
In terms of your fee schedule, is it a certain, just a set percent, whatever the seed
In the row crops and the turf grasses that we deal with, there is a minimum fee you pay, and then we charge per acre. On this particular enterprise, we might stay with that same business model, or we might try something different. It appears to me that there's going to be a lot of hand-holding and extra work involved in I quite frankly would feel more comfortable for Georgia Crop if there was a significant permit license fee, and maybe we could get part of that some way. So I'd like to consider that, but there's a lot of options. Currently, though, our primary means of supporting us is through a per acre inspection fee.
Anybody else?
All right, thank you, gentlemen.
Terry, thank you. All right, at this time, we'll go to Georgia Department of Ag. Commissioner, are you want speaking, or Bo, or a combination? Mike as well? Does anybody need to take a break? Everybody good?
Can I go ahead and get the coffee out since our commissioner's fixing to speak? It may be a while.
Here you go. It's time to go to the bathroom. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to be here. Good to see you. This is a great facility. I hope if you hadn't been here before, you ought to take a little tour after it's over with. It's another one of the treasures, I think, of good decision making over the course of leadership in this state. It's been mighty good. I've got with me Mike Evans. Mike has had our plant protection division and intimately involved in all things of animal or of plant disease and all of the inspections and in the plant world. So, and he's going to have a little something to say. I've got several points I want to make to you, and I want them to be constructive. And I appreciate, Mr. Chairman, we've had a number of conversations, and I appreciate every one of them. And I want to start with this. It dawned on me sitting down. I've used this illustration a time or two, but I checked the dates a while ago, and on December 17th of this coming year, we will celebrate 115 years of man being able to fly under power. And there's a David McCullough book about Wright brothers that I'd commit to all of you. It's a great book. The story flows about Wilbur and Orville and how they got to where they were, and then the challenges they found along the way. Now, a little bit of imagination that I would add to part of that story is I've always thought of it this way, because they were not in a great group of people. But I just imagine the fact, what if Kitty Hawk, North Carolina had been, what if it had been closer to town? Then they most likely would have been in a boarding house somewhere. And on the evening of December 16th, Orville and Wilbur are sitting around eating supper, and they're talking about what they're going to do on the 17th. Because the 17th, we finally made that last judgment. We're going to fly tomorrow. And I've always imagined that there would have been a lot of people in that boarding house that would have said, "You're crazy." Or think about how many people told them they were crazy all along that journey. Lots of people did. Lots of people did. And then all of a sudden the next day they flew. And history's, we're right here in an aviation school because of that. So I've always wanted to pitch professionally and personally. I am fearful of sitting in a boarding house and hearing people with ideas. I don't ever want to be the one that says, you're crazy. I want to be on the glass half full. We've known one another a long time. I hope that's the way I approach my job. I want us to be creative. I will come before you today, though. Y'all know many of us have talked. I've got some concerns. The first thing, though, to bring to you is, good and well, as long as I have to do this job, as long as you let me do this job, I'm gonna do precisely what you tell me to do. And that's when, Lord willing, in January, when I get third time my hand come off the Bible, I will have sworn to do what the laws of the state of Georgia say do, and I will do nothing less, and that's what, but now, where's the but in this? Because I set that up for a but, and so, and I've got several of them. I thought, Mr. Chairman, I'd already provided to you. I don't think that I have, but I will by the end of the day. My colleagues that have done this in the 21 states, some of my friends over here have a little higher degree of confidence in their acceptance of it than I witness in our meetings, because there is a regulatory nightmare out there. And it ranges not just from industrial hemp, but to the other stuff that we're not talking about. And so I think we got to have a clear partition there. But there are some regulatory hurdles that were not considered in the legislative process. I've got some suggestions that came from our national association, some musts. If you're ever going to go down this full-scale industrial hemp thing, and Mr. Chairman, I'll provide those for the record. I've got them coming from North Carolina because they drafted them. I guess 2 or 3 things, and I'd love to interact with some questions. It's never discussed about, I'm not aware of a plant on Earth that does not have a pest. Every plant has a pest. There are no pesticides approved under federal law for use on any cannabis, period. There's an exemption for minimal use pesticides. But the reason the EPA has an exemption for minimal risk pesticides is, I would suggest to you that the reason that they are minimal risk is because they work minimally. So there's no fungicide, there's no insecticide, there's no herbicide that's currently approved. Now, as my friends from the sheriffs talk about what they would be adamantly against, what I would always be adamantly against is we adjust any of our federal or state laws in order to expedite those kinds of things from a standpoint of human safety and food safety. And if you will, we're getting into the whole pharmaceutical side of this, which is really what this is about, in my opinion. Most of the discussion, I know there's food, I know there's fiber, but most of the talk I see is on the pharmaceutical side of this. So I would always be deeply concerned as a state, because we have the responsibility from the EPA MOU. We enforce EPA law, federal law, from this department, and when we need an emergency use, a 24C for turf grass or for vegetables or peanuts, some type of a special use pesticide, when we need that, that is a booger to get with EPA, because there are lots of things that go along with that. There are risk cups involved with the carcinogenic nature of chemicals and how they react in the body, and what the exposure to children is, all these kinds of things. And so that's been a big concern all along during this discussion, is the fact that I know we can have heavy population. I know that you can get ground cover. I know that you can deal with weeds that way. You might do it once, but what you going to do when you don't get a good stand? What are we going to do? Those are just questions that I still have about how we're going to structure that. And perhaps, Mr. Chairman, if the committee and the will of the legislature and the governor-elect decides to sign it, if we go down that research angle, which we've not yet done, maybe those are some of the questions that could be answered during that phase before you just got full blown.
I will wrap up this part by another, the facts are that this is a competing interest. And you and I have talked. And I really want this to be constructive, because I'm trying to be half, I want to see where we're going in the state, because we all have a responsibility. I'd be derelict if I didn't tell you this, I believe. And so we must remind one another, remind ourselves, how do we have to convince our other friends how important it is for fruit and vegetable research at the University of Georgia, and how much money that takes? Are we doing everything we possibly could be doing to help the cotton industry, which is the second largest cotton producing state in the nation? We're the #1 peanut producing state in the nation. We're the #1 forest products producing state in the nation. We're the #1 blueberry producing state in the nation. And we've got lots of promise. And it is important to ask the question from an agronomic standpoint, are we doing all that we should for them? I don't think there's one of us that would say yes, because we all want to see more done for those kind of things. So I think it is very important that to talk about, if you will, the elephant in the room, is the fact that if we do something else and commit resources to it, either we set it aside as a special project, or it will compete with the other things that we have interest in. We're adding to our portfolio. Maybe that's good. We do need alternatives. We've got to, fill in these things when there are other opportunities. We don't need to shun opportunities. I'm not saying that. But I am saying the reality of it is that there are competing interests. That means there are competing interests with this agency. We got, with the expansion of these, of the inland ports, which I think we all support, and I know Representative Gallagher, he wants all those inland ports to send more stuff to him so he can get them out. I don't have enough inspectors now to do phytosanitary certificates for the expansion of our inland ports. And I know we can fund those, and I am not giving a bureaucratic answer to say, well, that's an easy way to say no because y'all don't have the funding. But don't hear me say that. That's just a fact. I'm not saying that as an excuse. It's just a fact. So those are the kinds of things to consider if we go down this route. Now, what is our real strategic plan? Let's do it intentionally, and let's do it correctly, and let's fund it correctly. And whether that's by fees or whether it's, there again comes another problem. Y'all know how that goes with fees, because even though the gate card has the proper language in it that says all that money can be kept by us, y'all know we don't keep it. It's got the proper language in it that's the 10 or 12, the constitutional language that allows us to keep fees. We've been told, no, you can't do that. I really don't matter what either side of the law says, we have to turn all that back in. So there are a bunch of fees that I'm authorized to keep, but I don't get to. And then we've also we've doubled the fees on gate. And my word, we were not even appropriated a third of what we're going to collect this fall. And I don't want to, just using that as an example, I'm not trying to muddy the water, but those are some of the considerations that we have. And Mike's talked to some of his colleagues. Would you share a word or two, and then we'd be happy to respond to any questions, if that's okay, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, and I'll try to be brief. One of the things I enjoy greatly about my position is we work a lot with our growers, and in the past years we worked with Mr. Jennings and his son Phil on exports. We enjoy assisting blueberry growers shipping blueberries to Canada or timber folks shipping to China or these other countries, because it's a market they need to stay in business. You know, that kind of money may not be big in Atlanta, but for Pavo and Alma and Baxley and you get around Climax, it is big money for them. And it's important for those folks to be able to export to other countries and to other states to stay in business. I think in straight lines, so you'll just have to bear with me. We're at this point. There's somewhere down through here where the stuff will be worked out, but the journey there can be a little. There may be a few bumps, as Commissioner Black indicated. I think one of the big elephants in the room is crop improvement or crop protection chemicals. When we're starting to look at the oils, the seed, you're looking at human consumption. That gets EPA's and FDA's attention. And we don't know what they're going to do when they start looking at tolerances and they find residues in the parts per million. I enjoy working with growers, but I don't enjoy going down this path that if someone has a tolerance that shows up, what is USDA, what is EPA or FDA going to require? Are they going to allow that crop to go on into the market? Or are they going to say, no, I'm sorry, that crop has to be destroyed because there's a tolerance that we don't allow? In the other states, we've seen that some of the states, Wisconsin and Tennessee, they're averaging about 10% of the samples or the fields that they've sampled come back failing. I think it was Wisconsin had 195 growers last year, but 21 fields were destroyed because the test came back over the 0.3% THC. And if a farmer buys seed he thinks is good, this is good hemp, this is going to be the industrial.
Certified seeds should be 3.3%.
Yes, sir. And then they've put the time and labor in to bring that crop to a certain point, harvest, and the test comes back and says, no, that's above the tolerance, and it has to be destroyed. That's to me, that's tough. One of the things that I'm approaching 25 years with the Department of Ag, and the thing that's been enforced the entire 25 years is we're there not to put people out of business, but to assist the folks. We're a resource, an asset, and going out and saying, I'm sorry, your crop has to be destroyed, that's a little bit tough. That's definitely a little bit tough. So those are some things we've seen in the other states. I hope that we would be able to do something where, I don't know, it seems like there's some more techniques that need to be decided. When should we test? How should we test? So that we're not punishing someone who thinks they're doing everything right.
All right. Any questions? Chairman McCall?
In 1974, I worked on an experiment station at ABAC, and we were going to the swamps in Alapaha to get wild blueberry bushes to breed. At that point in time, blueberries were a competing industry with vegetables or peaches or whatever. And you see where that has come to. So I get the competing industry part, but I see where it can go. The other thing you're talking about destroying the crop, I understand that, and I'm for that. But I don't know how other states do it, but I know how Terry Hollifield and them do it as far as guaranteeing pure, certified, genetically correct seed. I've seen his guy spend 3 days cleaning out a plot combine to keep the seed pure. Is that not right, Terry? Right. So, and I understand where you're going with the THC may be high, and it may be the weather causing that. But I do know that as far as the seed genetics and the purity of the seed, they will handle it. And I get the part about the competing industry, and there's this many dollars to go all over this. But I don't know where the answer comes in, and that's not a question, it's more of a statement, I guess, as far as how things have evolved in this state in the last 40 years.
Mr. Chairman, to both of you, and but there are, Chairman Colbert and I talked briefly about this, and I still think it is, I think it has some value. I think you'd have to get some legislative, some legal minds together to figure out how to do it. Matter of fact, I talked with well, several of those signers of the previous medical cannabis bills. The fact, to me, we come back to that issue of pharmaceutical. It always comes back to that. And my wonder is if we already, if that's what we want to do, then then let's call it that, and let's regulate it as that. And let's set up something that will do that. And that gets it out of one pot and establishes something else. Now, granted, those groups still have to those groups still have to compete in the bigger scheme, but it doesn't have because it's going to have to be regulated that way. There is to go down the road of THC oil that we're going to legalize the cultivation of and not have control of the chemicals, and then wonder what's going to go into that. I can't believe we'll have that discussion of wondering whether that oil has been tested sufficiently, just as we would we're using it for pharmaceutical purposes, but we have no idea about the quality of the product under the normal circumstances that we have. And let's set those, if that's what we're going to do, then let's set them up and follow those protocols. That's all. That's what I'm saying. Regulate it for what you're going to use it for, as opposed to maybe a traditional agronomic crop.
Robert?
Thank you, Commissioner. I've got a couple of questions. One, how confident are you that the Farm Bill is going to pass with this legislation's in it?
Well, to one of our mutual friends about an hour and a half ago, he feels pretty good about it.
I ask you, do you feel pretty good about it?
If they do, I do. No, sir, the reason I think we're going to have a farm bill, and I think Jonathan is correct. I mean, the chairman's going, the leader's going to get what he wants, and I don't think it's anything less or anything more than what's there. I've not heard anything that those proposals are. Right now, there's a forestry hang-up I've heard about, and that's about it. And so, if they get that resolved, and Chairman, my understanding from some of our other friends that work the Hill up there pretty hard is Chairman Peterson, incoming Chairman Peterson, doesn't want to fool with the bill next year. So, and Chairman Conway's backed away from the.
My point is, I think we're going to have it, and we got to deal with it. I mean, it's going to probably be in it, in my opinion. But anyway, you mentioned a conflict about using chemicals, herbicides, fungicides. How are these other commissioners of agriculture, or who other state regulatory people, how are they dealing with
Some of them looking the other way.
Huh?
Some of them looking the other way because they don't know what to do.
Okay.
That's just, some of them throwing their hands up.
Why, do you think if this farm bill passes that some ag chemical companies will start applying for registrations for their chemicals on this plan, and how long will that take to get approved, you think?
Okay, that's precisely what has to happen with the passage of the bill. And so if you have, Farm Bill passes, everything moves forward, states retreat from their legal, their own individual state status, and it becomes, you know, broad. My hope is that we're not going to do anything to short circuit that system just because it's a new idea. Because that's not fair to Peaches, that's not fair to anybody else. Right. And so, the typical, I have heard some discussions that there are other families of chemistry that may be similar, that may shorten that registration process, but it's not like that, because the typical, you know, new chemistry's 8-10 years. You know, it gets into hundreds of millions of dollars, as you know, but you know, perhaps there will be some of those chemistries that are somewhat similar in nature, and maybe those risk ups and analysis that could be established in a quicker fashion. But I would hate to see that short circuited. I don't think that'd be good for us. Yeah, that was Mike's point. That, I mean, EPA will have to take the lead, and they're, boy, you talk about tone deaf. We hear nothing out of EPA on that movement.
Thank you. Chairman Pruitt.
Thank you very much, Commissioner, and thank you for being open-minded, and you brought up some good points. Some of these have already been answered to some degree in some of our other meetings, and when you get our report, I think you'll see that. And again, we'll continue down this road until the last minute, whatever it is, to make sure that everybody feels good in the event that we go forward with it. My question is that you mentioned different pests. If other states have done research and there are certain pesticides that they found that they need or don't need, is there additional work to be done because of the location you plant that plant versus Georgia versus Tennessee or Kentucky, and potential pests that could involve farmers' other crops, which you said yourself is a big concern, but we can't take somebody else's test. Certainly we can learn from them, but it has to be our own research, I guess, to a certain degree. But when do you ever really get into pest control or disease control until you experience it?
No, couldn't agree with you more from a standpoint.
Because there's no way to test for something that you don't know exists.
There's no way to, well, I will stick to what I said. If there's not a plant on earth that doesn't have, not the one that I'm aware of.
But
so
you don't know
we have to understand.
You don't know what it is yet.
You don't. Well, you can predict there will be some derivative of a white fly or a spider mite or an aphid or a white mold, which is pretty common on anything we do here. Can you control those? Yes. Can you control them safely? Yes. Could you control them for a food product? Yes. Could you control them for a pharmaceutical? Yes, I would assume. I know a lot more about food than I do pharmaceuticals as far as tolerances and things. But you're right until you know that in the isolated place that you want to grow, because that's why we have cotton specialists in Alabama, and why we have them in Georgia, and why we have them in South Carolina. And because sometimes the conditions are a little bit different, it's important to have that body of science, which is why I go back to if we go down this research, those are the kinds of things that you need to find out.
But
Chairman Call.
The hiccup comes in, you can't do it legally because there's nothing registered, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Nothing's, and that's just Gary telling you what the federal law says. That's just like the Schedule 1 stuff. The Schedule 1 or back to what's being changed in the Farm Bill. That's one of the issues, but it does not make these other issues go away. Is what I'm trying to tell you.
I mean, I know you could put down trailland to control grass in it just by the nature of the kind of plant it is, but it's illegal to do that because trailland ain't labeled for hemp. I Am I correct on that?
That would be, nothing's labeled for hemp.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, nothing, there's nothing. There are no legal products.
It's gotta
Phil-
get there.
Can I ask Philip will know what I'm talking about. What's the, it may have been Trailflower, I'm trying to remember if it's Trailflower or Bravo. What's the difference in that you use on peanuts, but you can't, it's the same active ingredient on turf grass and peanuts, but except the turf grass variety's got an active price about 5 times as much, and it's a different label, same active ingredient, but it's labeled differently for different uses, and yeah. So those are the types of questions that you have to have a sound thing. If I'm gonna, Mr. Chairman, what I would hope that we do, and this is what I hope that we'll always be this when we come to you with a proposition. I want to always be strategic. I want to try to answer as many questions as I can up front. We don't ever. It's taken us about 4 times to get Gate about right. I think Gates fixing to get real boring, which is good. It needs to be boring and go away, because I think we've about got most of the bugs. But we didn't have that. You had no idea about that 6 years ago, 5 years ago when we passed it. We all did the best we could, but then it's taken several iterations to get to a place. I just want us to be strategic and think through. And I don't mind other places making a bunch of the mistakes first, because we can learn from that. Because that's one of the best things. So, what is the? Unless there's another question, I'll just say this, Mr. Chairman, and we'll hush. I remember the first year there was a bill, the first year that there was a bill about the medical side of this. And I remember it was introduced first, and it had us regulating it. And there really wasn't much thought behind it. Just that we had us in it. Well, we were successful in convincing Arthur and some other folks that maybe we didn't need to be in there. And then it tried to jump back in, and then the third time I got a call on crossover day, on the day before crossover, because Bill was up in committee, up in Representative Chairwoman Cooper's committee. And so I went over to the Capitol, and I visited with several members who had signed the bill, and they said, we don't understand your concerns. I said, well, not one soul was walked across the street. No, I hadn't had any conversation with anybody in committee, but now I'm being told that we're going to regulate this. I don't have anybody with a gun and a badge. What about chain of custody in our seed lab? What about the pesticide issue? What about a couple of other things? And I said, those are just kind of starters. And my good friend, he told me, and he was as serious as he could be. He said, we just thought you'd work that out. And y'all know, and you've learned, this is, particularly since this has been debated a number of years now, this is a whole lot more than we just think y'all would. Gary, just work this out. The department will just work this out. I want us to be a lot more strategic about that. And I would say if you go down the research line, don't just be very strategic about what you want the research thing. Don't just say, oh, we'll just approve what Farm Bill said. Let's do intentionally what we want to do. And then I think we'll get a better product at the end, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for your comments. I appreciate it. I'd ask if you would sit there, and if Jonathan and Terry would come back up, bring a couple chairs as well. If anybody has any further questions, I know I got a couple for Jonathan I'd like to get him to go over. Maybe he can address some of the issues you brought up as well, what other states are doing. Terry, I don't know if anybody has any questions, but you want to come up front if anybody has any other questions.
I'll try to hide, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
Y'all ain't got any vote on paper.
I guess I'd like to start with Jonathan. The pesticide issue, that's
Sure.
one of the major hangups. What is Kentucky doing to get around this? Are they just turning their head the other way and not looking at it? Are they doing it organically or legally not spraying anything on it?
No, I remember the first year harvest, that was 2014 or 15. There were a couple of farmers that used pesticides, and they were caught and they were penalized, and they were told if they did it again, then they would not be able to be part of the program. And since then, it is if I want to stereotype the typical hemp farmer, this is an entrepreneur and a risk taker. So he's not allowed to use pesticides. He doesn't have crop insurance. Hopefully that's going to be fixed pretty soon. He's got to be very careful about the THC level not spiking. But they have, through the last 4 years, have been able to come up with a very profitable industry with all of those concerns in the background. And so they've been able to be good actors. Now, there certainly are bad actors, and the good commissioners of agriculture don't turn their heads, and I would imagine this one obviously is not going to either. But during this period of time where it's still a young industry, that they're relying on the successes of others, and whether it's Kentucky or Colorado, to be able to have a crop that they can be comfortable that the THC level won't spike, that they can grow it without pesticides. They're using innovative techniques, and I'm probably in this room the least knowledgeable about farming, but I'm told that hemp farmers hemp farmers that were former tobacco farmers have learned from that experience. They put their crop in the ground later. They wait an extra month than they would have otherwise to avoid having that the pesticide problem that might have arisen with tobacco. So it's certainly a concern, but it's something that states where you've got strong departments of agriculture like you do here in Georgia have got around. I do also want to mention a couple things in terms of the final product. January 1st, the industry is well, it's already launched, but on January 1st, you'll start seeing hemp products with a seal on it from the U.S. Hemp Authority. And those products will have gone through an intense self-regulatory process that will test not only for THC level, but for toxins, anything harmful if it's a food product. And companies that qualify for that seal will get have to prove best manufacturing practices, and so it really is a rigorous. Any good industry, particularly a good food industry, has these, and the hemp industry is following. And I guess my last point too is, again, going back to that farmer, they're not looking for a handout. They're not looking for a dime from you. They understand that there are food industries and fabric industries that are heavily subsidized, need that subsidization, and they're not asking for that. They just want to be able to grow this crop, and they feel they're willing to take that free market entrepreneurial risk, and most of us have succeeded so far.
Mike talked about, if it tests over the 0.3%.
Yeah.
I know in Kentucky they give them a little variance up to 0.39 when they sample their field. They got a little bit of variance. And if it fails, I know they do a retest within 30 days. Is that what they told us? They go back and field because it changes, and they come back and do a retest.
Yeah.
And if it tests good, it's okay. But if it tests bad again, then that crop is destroyed. Do you have a number on how many times they've had to have a farmer destroy a field because it tested too high? Is that something that's common?
I think the commissioner mentioned in Wisconsin it was about 10%. I think that when our program started in Kentucky, it was about that level, but now it's gotten to be much smaller. Again, as the industry matures and the seed certification becomes more scientific, and people understand the various issues about climate, moisture, and temperature, it's becoming less a problem. But do know that the 2018 Farm Bill contemplates this, and there is a hard level of 0.3 that continues to be the difference between hemp and marijuana. But even the 2018 Farm Bill allows states to provide for second chances and remediation, even when it's done negligently. The crackdown only comes when it is repeat offenders and when it's intentional. And, intentional are people who are either wanting to grow marijuana or who are trying to fool with a crop in a way that's irresponsible.
But if it's over that, they still have to destroy it.
Oh, yeah, no. And, I recall last year's crop, there was one, it was actually 2 years ago. There's a big story about it testing at 0.6 and at 0.6 to 0.8, and the farmers were hewing and crying, and the industry was like, that's too bad. You've had your chances, and it's everyone else is playing by the rules, and the Commissioner of Agriculture is required to follow these rules, and we applauded the Commissioner for doing what the law told him to do.
Chairman Pruitt?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. A couple of questions. One is that anybody that's growing it currently, can they get crop insurance for problems such as that, provided they use certified seed? And did you find that these people did not use certified seed?
So the ones that
had to be destroyed?
Yeah, the one that didn't, the crop was destroyed, I think that was before there was a certification requirement. Now, I'm sure that there are examples of people using certified seed where there was a spike, but built into some of those contracts are the certified seed. The legitimate certified seed dealers are going to build in their contracts that if you do X, Y, and Z, we'll hold you harmless, or you'll hold us harmless for the seed, because if it was intended to be less than 0.3, then I'm guaranteeing you when I'm selling it, it's going to be less than 0.3.
Second question of mine, Mr. Chairman. We have, if I remember right, something like $800 million worth of hemp product coming into the United States every year, whether it be oils or cereal. It's just a matter of when you get a red truck, all of a sudden everybody's got a red truck.
Yeah.
And so when you start noticing hemp, it's everywhere. Cereal, oils, cloth, milk, vitamins. Is any of that being regulated in any way now when it comes into the
No,
US?
not at all. And
So what makes us, we're looking to put something more stringent on what we're doing than what people we're already allowing to come
yeah, I
in?
mean, we're going from and I don't want to say complete Wild West, because the FDA does monitor and regulate to a degree products that are ingested. But by developing a domestic farm industry, you're not only ensuring that that U.S. farmers and Georgia farmers get a chance of making the money that Chinese and European farmers are making right now, but you also are putting oversight. So any Georgia farmers got to be licensed and supervised by the Georgia Department of Agriculture, and same across the country. And then we are, as an industry, layering over this self-regulatory structure, which will ensure that they meet even stricter standards, particularly when they're ingestible products.
So, I'm sorry, but one more follow-up. In the event that we pass legislation and we set policy and we set guidelines and regulations, then the state of Georgia would be doing put that same policy in place that would affect products that's coming into Georgia from somewhere else. Therefore, if they're not tested and follow the same policies that we put on our own products made here, that would do away with allowing any to come into Georgia?
Right. So we, in our we presented some sample legislation that Ryan Quarles, Commissioner of Agriculture, your commissioner's counterpart in Kentucky, has presented to the National Association of, I'm sorry what the name of your organization, NASDA. He's presenting that for their consideration nationally, and so we've presented that. We worked on that with the Kentucky Commissioner, and that would help provide not only a program of regulation of the growth, but also a structure in terms of what hemp products can be sold. Again, it would have to be, the level would have to be 0.3 or less. And again, we even have some in our legislation, the ability of states to work with the self-regulatory organizations, that if that's something, we'd love to work with you to help make sure that any product that does, I don't know whether you can restrict, you have to have a certain seal, but that you could place different regulations on the sale of those products as well in conjunction with self-regulatory.
Carl?
My illustrious commissioner alluded to some things that made me think about when I was growing up watching the shows on Saturday mornings where they said, conjunction, junction, what's your function? And there's a word called if. If is a cricket word that can't be fixed. I got excited about the possibilities of possible legislation in reference to the hemp industrial industry for the great possibilities of the farmers, especially the farmers in North Georgia. And hearing my commissioner, one of the things I kept hearing was, but funding, the funding that we've already put forward was an inception to what we need to do for North Georgia. And I understand that when you look at this, you're talking about not being able to infiltrate the funding and the things that you're trying to do with farmers, with peaches and all the above. I was alluding to the right with Chairman Pruitt. Have we done some special funding for special projects? If all of that should be considered from those great butts that you have could benefit those farmers and not infiltrate the funding that we need to work on and supporting those farmers and those potential bettering their situations and their crops. Do you think that this would be some positive legislation that would help economically the farmers in the end if we work all those parables out?
Yes. I think that's a good approach, and I think it's still I think it's worthy of discussion in the whole regulatory and respect to my friend from Kentucky, whether or not it's the Department of Agriculture or the Department of Public Health, if you're going to regulate it as a pharmaceutical, just think through those things. Let's think through them together. What makes better sense, and if then that winds up being granted, it's coming from the ground. Granted, I understand that, but at the same token, it's what are your real uses and what's the intent? And so, if it's be strategic and very intentional in that regulatory framework, and then put the money behind it to do what you want to do, but let's don't compromise the other things where we have needs. That would be the perfect package, Representative. And I know Jonathan wants to say something. We'll come back one more quick.
I just wanted to agree with you completely. Again, I didn't mention on the model bill, but and I don't want to step on our Commissioner of Agriculture. I'll just tell you what our Commissioner of Agriculture wants. He wants to be in charge of regulation of farming. He doesn't want to be in charge of regulation of what food people put in their mouths. That goes into, in our model bill, that goes to the Department of Health or whatever it's called here in Georgia. So that's an important distinction he makes. We don't want to have to put, yeah, that's in the
model
draft
legislation
that we've put together. So.
And that's where there are similarities, but there are great differences between the states because we've got the food, and so if it comes on the food, it does come to us. And Representative Pruitt, you've asked a good question that I would bet we're already doing it, but we take random food samples all the time from everything another little sideline concern going forward, because there's people, a lot of this is either labeled or it's at least claimed to be organic, and that's a whole nother thing, because there's a bunch of organic things that are not. I mean, they're organic in that they have carbon in them, but they're not organic in the fact that they may not have some type of crop protection chemical engaged in their cultivation. But we want to be sure that, you know, I want to go check to see if we've checked any hemp products. We would not because they are hemp. We would check them because they are food products. But we need, as Georgia continues to grow, those demands are going to continue to grow too. We've got 2 people that check seafood, and 80% of our seafood's coming from is imported. So that's a big, you know, another thing that just shows you that, you know, we've got plenty of places to you know, strengthen our food safety programs. Philip Jennings and I known one another an awful long time, and matter of fact, he was going to be an ag teacher too, but he went on to be real successful. Then the rest of us get to watch him. But we've been friends a long time, and I'm not. This is not a putting you on the spot thing, because I think we would laugh about part of this, because just as you have some of the states have these responsibilities for checking the THC, and if they don't match, then they would have to by law put them out. Y'all know some of our storied history with Vade onion. It's the same thing, but there is no regulation of that sweetness, and we have to do that by timing, and you know, you just hope people hold. But we do regulate it by variety. Do you ever grow Candy Kim? But I think you'll agree with you. Candy Kim is an early variety of Vade onion. It's on the approved list. My friends debate each year whether they want it to go on or off, and we've usually wind up settling on the fact that, well, leave that in the farmer's hands to be able to grow the variety. It's an approved variety. But you can make Candy Kim sweet, or you can dang sure make it hot. And that's an issue of fertilizer, and it's an issue of maturity. Do you agree with that? And so if we go down the angle of refined research, you know, if that's the first step, that's one of those climatic things that we've got to find out on this THC level. What does it do in our humidity? What does it do in our different soil types? What does it do based upon planting dates? What does it do with what does THC do under different conditions? And I know that's what you're trying to figure out up in Canada too. But you disagree with it? Those are the kinds of things you've got to figure out. And if you figure some of those out, then maybe Representative Gallery, maybe you eliminate some of these other buts. But
if you use a certified seed and you grow it in different parts of the country and even different parts of Georgia, it may come out with a different THC.
We have all the plant scientists will agree with that.
But you would rather the ag department take control and to research and regulate that rather than let the farmer just figure it out on their own?
Well, I'd rather the University of Georgia do that, because they're the one that do the research. We're not in that.
I don't want the committee to be misled about this requirement of using certified seed. A requirement to use certified seed is a good tool in the toolbox, but it's not the answer. And there's a couple of reasons why that is, and you pointed out one of them. Let's not assume that because, first of all, I can only certify seed when I know the pedigree, the breeding history, performance of. okay? And that is data that is provided to me by research scientists. What I understand, particularly in Tennessee, was that they require certified seed the first year. The problem with that was that, first of all, there's not enough certified seed. Certainly not enough certified seed of varieties that we think will work. Third, just because you plant a certified seed doesn't mean that you'll have a marketable product, because THC is I am told and read that THC is significantly influenced by the environment. And we know that these plants are very light sensitive. Those of you who have grown soybeans understand light length is the plant getting tall, putting on blooms, and those sort of things. Like I say, I think certified seed is a good thing to have in there as a tool, particularly in the research project. But I don't, from what I hear from Tennessee and from Kentucky, that is not a foolproof answer for regulatory type work. It looks good for documentation, but it's not the answer. In other words, just because you plant seed that I certify that comes from another state or country that certifies it does not mean that farmer is going to always have a marketable product. So it's one of those things we need to vet very carefully, talk to a lot of people about who have experience in it before you consider putting that in some sort of legislation.
If I could just address it too, I want to make sure I didn't leave the misimpression. I completely agree with what he just said. There's also the factor of you can get certified seed and it could come from a very legitimate source. And not only are there extreme weather issues, but there are bad actors that can manipulate even certified seed into something that would be higher than that level. So I don't want to leave the impression that certified seed is an answer to the problem, but it is a great first step, and it does help a lot. And while it doesn't eliminate all those uncertainties, it certainly is much better than the uncertified variety.
I want to ask one
Go ahead,
question.
Carl.
And alluding to, I know you were talking about Canada, and I know you all had visited Kentucky. What's so far, what's the economic benefits so far for Kentucky or Canada? Are they benefiting on a level that you see some economic growth and benefiting from the hemp plant?
The numbers that I've seen, it's not there yet. The profitability, I think the profitability is going to be in the oil. It's going to be, and I see it sort of like the tobacco farmers used to do, where they are doing now. They contract direct with the buyer. It'd be like the farmer, contracting with the manufacturer, processor to buy my product for X amount. Then he knows, what he can produce, what he's going to make going in, what his input is. I think that's the model I see that works in my mind.
Yeah, the Kentucky, again, we're just in the fourth year, so it's still a very new program, but we do have, I want to say, about a dozen companies that have already hired at least a couple dozen people on their workforces. I know of 2 companies that have hired over 100 people each. Just getting started. In some of the more mature markets, Australia and Canada, I know of companies that are producing hemp products, mostly ingestible hemp products, that have gone public and are making a ton of money, at least for their shareholders. And so, again, this is all in the beginning, and it's hard to put numbers to it. There was one study that came out that said that they thought it would be a $22 billion industry by 2020. 2022 by 2022. I don't know. I don't want to attest to that. But even if it's just a $2 billion, even if it's just 10% of what they're saying, then that could provide a lot of good economy for a lot of farmers.
Chair McCall?
This is kind of a statement, but I want to make sure folks understand kind of the genesis of this legislation that we're talking about. I think it was last year I was in Kansas City at another one of these national ag meetings, and Commissioner Quarles did a presentation on Kentucky's hemp production. And I talked to him, not a lot, but some. And I asked him, I said, why are you so behind this? And he said he grew up on a tobacco farm in Kentucky. And with the tobacco industry going as bad as it has, because, you know, folks don't want you smoking and all that kind of stuff, that he was looking for something else for his farmers who used to grow tobacco to do. Well, Georgia, especially southeast Georgia, is kind of in the same shape. But all this discussion we having, it's not going to happen unless we decide somewhere along the line that it would be okay to grow it in Georgia. None of the research, none of anything going to happen. By any means, it wasn't intended to make Terry's people or Scott's people have a harder job. That never was. You know, and I get the fact that it is gonna make it. Y'all have something else to do. But the whole reason, besides, you know, the industry wants to locate here, was to try to help out farmers that might have another alternative to use their land for and make a little profit off of something. But nothing's gonna happen until we say it's okay to do this in Georgia.
Yes,
You know,
start
we're
somewhere.
one of the 9 states that haven't approved it yet. So that's the whole genesis of this whole study committee and discussion that we are having. And I'm not correct.
No, you're spot on, and the blueberry farmers 2 years in a row, you know, they had a hard freeze, wipe them out.
Right.
This might be an alternative that they could come back, you know, it's just planted later in the year, that they possibly could still generate some cash flow off of it. So it's opportunity definitely for farmers.
I just want everybody to understand that it wasn't intended to make y'all's job harder. It was looking at another alternative for a farmer to be able to do something. But none of the pesticide research, none of the testing that y'all are gonna have to do is gonna happen unless we say that we may be number 42. You know, that's right.
Go ahead, Rob.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for saying that. That's my thoughts exactly, too, and I want to reiterate that to everybody as well, too. Well said. I just don't want to get further and further behind the curve. I don't know whether it's going to be a good crop, whether the climate's great for Georgia, but I'm always one of those guys that likes to experiment and try and at least see if it's an option for us. So that's the only reason I want to try it too, is to see if it's some economic benefit for farmers in Georgia.
Jonathan, do you have that sample legislation that you can leave with us or get to us?
I can email it to you from the computer. It's
Okay,
there. I do want to say that I really hope that Georgia has a successful program, but I hope it's not more successful than Kentucky's. I mean, you've already got football over us. Let us have hemp over you, if you don't mind.
No.
Okay, he said no. Okay.
All right. Any other questions? Normally don't do this. Anybody make any further comments? Phil, you seem to.
I'll say that we do have approved varieties in Canada that they allow us to grow. And of the hundreds of samples that we pulled tests on, we didn't have anything of those approved varieties that went over the accepted level of THC. We didn't have to destroy any fields. We didn't have any problems whatsoever. I will say too that the money will follow the problem. You can forget, Commissioner, having to piss your blueberry farmers off and the turfgrass guys, because the money will flow in. When you look at the billions of dollars, and we're talking a little different scenario, but when you look at the billions of dollars that's been raised on the Toronto exchanges for the support of the hemp and the cannabis industry in Canada, there's no money. It was like a guy called me the other day that was a major player, and he said, I've got $1 million for you to find me a university in the Southeast to do this. So it was self-funding of research. So I think that in the future, the hemp industry, the industrial hemp industry. And let me make it clear, I've never smoked marijuana in my life. I'm in Canada, it's legal. You can go down to the Liquor Commission. All the cannabis in Canada is sold through the liquor stores, and it's sold through the Canadian Liquor Commission. And it's a unique industry up there. I don't necessarily want any part of the cannabis industry, but I think the hemp industry is where the CBD oil will be found, where the pellets will be produced, and there will be tons of spin-offs. Go in the grocery store, go to Whole Foods, and look at the price of hemp hearts. Everything, you go in the grocery store, and all this stuff you guys are talking about letting us grow. We can buy it in the grocery store. All you're doing is helping the other states and in Canada import all these products. People go on the internet every day and order thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars worth of CBD oil. Comes in a capsule. They take it every day for sleep disorders, for seizures, for hundreds of things. I don't see nobody jumping up trying to regulate them. And it's coming in from everywhere. And you start talking to people. I didn't get real familiar with the industry till I went to Canada. But when you start talking to people and you realize how many people, yesterday a banker said to me, you know, I had prostate cancer, Philip, and I'm a little concerned about my prostate cancer. I think I'm going to go on to CBD oil. Every day. And while we were in Canada, we were actually modifying combines, just trying to figure out this hemp thing. And while we were up there, we went to a salvage yard, and this guy says, I can't hear good because I took so much chemotherapy, I had brain cancer. He said, what are y'all doing? I said, we're trying to modify a combine. He said, there was a road grower of hemp in the next province. And when they gave up on me I was fixing to die, had stage 4 cancer. He called me and he said, I got some oil. If you'll take this oil, there's a possibility, I won't guarantee you might get better. He said, that man saved my life. And if you go to Canada and you see all the people who claims, I'm not saying it works, I'm not saying there's any research, but if you find all the people who claim they have been cured for cancer as a result of the CBD oil from industrial hemp, it makes you change your whole attitude about the way you feel about it. I want high CBD, and I want no THC. That's what we want to accomplish.
Mr. Connor, this
We're here for 2 reasons, personally and professionally. My mother died of cancer 4 weeks ago. My father died of cancer 10 years ago. My mother's had cancer 3 times. We've got to find an answer. And CBD oil is an answer to help people. It's not a cure, but it helps people. Second thing is, I've been a banker, an ag banker for 33 years. And I, the commissioner, will tell you that no pun intended, these guys are dying for the mind. Kingly order. If you see what happened in South Georgia, there's a lot that's going to have to change. And I do believe, and I've been a conservative person all my life, and if you'd have told me that I've been sitting up industrial hemp leaf, I'd say you were crazy. That's why you're talking about the right way. But from a financial standpoint, I believe it is a solution for some of our problems on the farm. Not a cure-all, but it's an option. And if you look at what the markets, the financial markets have done in the industrial hemp industry over the last year, the old saying in the banking world is if you follow the money, there's no way the state of Georgia can't take those opportunities and use them for the citizens of Dr.
state. We're smart people, we can figure this thing out. But I do believe it's a huge opportunity for the state of Georgia, and the people, and the farmers, the ag sector of the state of Georgia. Thank you.
Well said. Thank you. Any other questions? Any other comments? I would like to thank everybody for coming. We're going to have our wrap-up meeting next Monday in Atlanta at 1 o'clock at the Capitol.